Scholars are slowly piecing together the strange story of the settlement that lies east of Jerusalem at Qumran, on the edge of the Dead Sea. Here, a previously unknown sect exiled themselves. Under conditions of great hardship, they formed the community that wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls. Finding their writings is a race against time. Even as scroll traffickers haggle over the fragments, they're decomposing. But new technology is enhancing the fading images and allowing scraps to be reunited, fueling an ongoing debate about their meaning. One of the world's foremost scholars is attempting to penetrate the world of the scroll traders. He's Professor James Charlesworth of Princeton Theological Seminary. As well as writing many books on the subject, he tirelessly follows up any possible leads to new scrolls.
I have seen fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls turn to dust. I've seen other fragments turn to water because they're so fragile. It's important for me to get them before they disappear. They've never been seen for 2,000 years, but we have to find them before they decay.
His task is not an easy one. It's a question of patience and slowly building up contacts.
Now we have tremendous consensus that these are sensationally important for our culture, for an understanding of what it means to be a Jew, and for what it means to be a follower of Jesus.
Charlesworth's latest leads will take him into the desert and to Bethlehem. For 50 years, the Western world has been hanging on each new scroll find, longing to know more about the birth of modern Judaism and Christianity, hoping this knowledge can promote a new harmony between these great faiths. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls begins in 1947 with the Bedouin, groups of Arabs who wandered the hills with their sheep and goats. The story goes that a young man, known as the Wolf, was tending his flock. Looking for a stray in a cave, he threw a stone inside, only to hear the sound of it hitting a jar. The wolf returned to his encampment with strange scrolls made of dried, stretched animal skin. It's said that the wind blew some fragments away, and children played with others. Some were used to repair sandals, and some even used for kindling. Still others found their way to an Arab trader in Bethlehem named Kondo. This was at the time of the violent birth of the State of Israel, and feelings were running high between Arabs and incoming Jews. It's said the Arab Kondo, suspecting the scrolls contained an ancient form of Jewish writing, deliberately destroyed one of them, fearing for his own safety should he be found in possession of such a precious Jewish document. When the fragments from this cave found their way into the hands of academics, they were both excited and confused. Eventually, they too were able to locate this cave, now known as Cave 1, revisited by Israeli archaeologist Hanan Eshel.
And what they found was this cave. Those two entrances were blocked, and the only entrance which was open is this small one. The Bedouins threw this stone into the cave, and over there the jars were standing.
On the floor beside the jars were a few tiny scraps. Here, on this fragment, they could just about make out a word. But the words were in a rare and unfamiliar form of Hebrew. Strangely, it was like Hebrew writing found inscribed on these mortuary objects. These are ossuaries, pottery receptacles for bones of the dead. Because we know when they were in use, during and just before the time of Jesus, the similarity of writing styles also dates the scrolls to that time, 2,000 years ago. Here was another fragment. Again, words could be picked out.
Into the midst of the fire, Mishrak, Shadrach, not singed.
The words were from the book of Daniel, possibly dated from as early as 150 BC, only a few copies away from the original. Why were the experts so awestruck by this discovery? Because before the Dead Sea Scrolls came to light, the earliest existing Hebrew texts were medieval, from around the 11th century AD. Now there were versions from 1,000 years earlier, from the dawn of Christianity and before, undistorted by later errors and theological censorship. But who wrote these fragments? It would seem that this newly discovered desert sect had its roots beneath modern-day Jerusalem. Around 150 years before the time of Jesus, Judaism had fragmented into a number of sects, such as the Pharisees and the Sadducees, all of whom were arguing among themselves. One group of dissident priests, rebelling at what they saw as corruption and political infighting among the temple hierarchy, left in disgust for the desert. With them they carried scrolls, books from the Hebrew Scriptures. They had the book of Isaiah, one verse of which spurred them on.
A voice is crying, "In the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord."
On the shores of the Dead Sea, at the lowest place on the face of the earth, these Jewish dissidents founded a community at the ruins of an old Jewish fort at Qumran. In the cool of the evenings, these Qumranites began to make precious copies of their Hebrew Scriptures. Their writings showed that they were intellectually advanced. They developed a sophisticated solar calendar and had medical knowledge, writing about the flow of blood in the body. The Qumranites also began to write their own religious works. Conditions were harsh at Qumran. On reaching middle age, many of the community moved on. The local burial site contains hundreds of graves, but the remains are mainly young men and some women. Because these scrolls were being written at a time of much Jewish turmoil and the formation of Christianity, they provide invaluable information, particularly as there is so little other documentation from the period. But there are frustratingly few fragments. As always, new scrolls are needed. A man claiming to be the wolf, the young shepherd who discovered those first scrolls, lives in Bethlehem. Jim Charlesworth has decided to go and see if he can remember any other details.
We worked in caves and emptied them completely. There was one cave we worked one night. A small one, not a big one. We worked for a short while and found a piece of leather with nothing written on it. But the Jordanian army saw us and started firing at us. We ran away, and that was that.
Would you take me to see that cave?
I'll show you. Why not?
Following in the footsteps of the Bedouin and the archaeologists who have scoured this area looking for ancient writings, Charlesworth is hopeful that the Wolf's Cave may hold the elusive prize of more Dead Sea Scrolls.
This is good signs. We've got some pottery here, some ancient pottery. And you can see it goes down pretty deep here.
The Qumranites lived in caves and tents outside the main settlement, which they reserved for communal and sacred activities.
It looks very much like many of the crevices in which Dead Sea Scrolls had been placed. Well, there's no question this has been inhabited. Are we standing now on scrolls?
Archaeologists have visited this cave, but it has never been fully excavated. It's impossible to assess the layers of history at a glance. To explore it further, he'll have to get a permit. But Charlesworth has every reason to be optimistic.
Romani. Exactly what I thought. We have Roman pottery here. We have clear evidence of occupation in that one cave from the time of Isaiah down to the destruction of the 1st century.
The impact of the wolf's first discoveries in 1947 cannot be exaggerated. Texts thought to be extinct were rediscovered. There was the complete book of Isaiah. The sheer excitement of finding the material written about in the Gospels of Jesus is recalled by a leading biblical scholar.
In the Gospel of Luke, there was a story of Jesus going into a synagogue and being given the scroll of Isaiah to read from. And now we have a scroll of Isaiah written just before Jesus' lifetime, one just like he would have been handed.
The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has sent me to bring good news to the poor.
But did these ancient versions make any difference? They did. The scrolls from the original cave, Cave 1, brought immediate new insights.
In Isaiah 53, verse 11, talking about the suffering servant, it says, "From the anguish of his soul he shall see." And now the book of Isaiah from the Dead Sea Scrolls says, "He shall see light." For the community that read this, light was very important. They were the sons of light. The text means something special to them. What he sees is what they can see. It's the truth of God that they have.
As well as providing new insights into the Qumran sect, these scrolls also helped clear up more mundane biblical oddities.
In Isaiah 45, we used to read, "I go before you to level the swellings," a very strange and unusual use of a Hebrew word which the dictionaries didn't really know how to represent properly. But now, in light of the Qumran scrolls, we can see there was a small scribal error, and it really should be translated, "I go before you to level the mountains." It makes much better sense in context.
But there were more than parts of the Hebrew Bible found in the cave. There were never-before-seen writings, including an amazing war scroll of the Qumranites.
The 1st Division shall be armed with spears to bring down the slain by the judgment of God, to pay the reward for the wickedness of all the nations of vanity.
These new writings not only brought to life the vision of the Qumranites, but the world of Jesus and the controversies he became embroiled with. For example, what to do on a Sabbath. The Qumran scrolls take a very harsh view.
On the Sabbath, thou shalt not help a goat if it falls into a pit, or even if it is crying out in need of help with a birth.
Jesus, of course, said, yes, you could, and his opponents probably agreed with him, but not these people. Even a dying animal, bottom of a pit, its owner could look down, watch it die. Sorry, it's Sabbath, I can't pull you out, you'll just have to die there.
In fact, it says in the Gospel of Luke that Jesus goes even further. He heals people on the Sabbath. The scrolls reveal how other Jewish sects saw this as totally shocking and displeasing to God. Before the discovery of the scrolls in Cave 1, the world was largely dependent on a translation of the Hebrew scriptures into Greek, known as the Septuagint, which was written by Jews living in a Greek world and perhaps colored by a Greek mindset. It has always been presumed that the translation was faithful. Now it could be checked.
The Qumran scrolls have confirmed one quite spectacular mistranslation from the book of Isaiah. A virgin shall conceive and bear a son. The Hebrew doesn't say virgin at all. It says young woman. Now, why it was translated into Greek as virgin, we don't know. We know the consequences of all that have been monumental for Christianity, but perhaps it was because the idea of virgins conceiving and gods being fathers of children was not so strange in the Greek world. But it was strange in the Jewish world, and now, thanks to the Qumran manuscripts, we know that the Jewish scriptures never had any virgins conceiving. It was a young woman.
Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and his name shall be called
a young
Emmanuel.
woman shall conceive and bear a son.